Now I'm very excited to bring back a former NFL player and Princeton University two-time academic All-American. You've seen and heard him on weekends broadcasting football games and on the Even Money podcast, along with the Ross Tucker football podcast, Fantasy Feast, and more. I'm very excited to welcome back NFL analyst Mr. Ross Tucker to the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, thanks for coming back on the show, man. How has summer been treating you?
Of course, Kiev. I feel like this is an annual thing now for me and you. I love it. Love coming, talking with you, getting ready for the NFL season with your listeners. Summer has been amazing. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It always is too short, though. It always feels like the season comes real quick. I guess I'll be doing my first preseason game a week from Saturday when the Ravens host the Eagles. So this is my last weekend. This is my last weekend of freedom before I'm traveling every weekend. But I wouldn't rather be doing anything else.
No, you're so good at it. It's so fun to watch, man. I can't wait to see some of your broadcasts. But yeah, it is over. Get your popsicles in, get your ice cream, get it all over with because it's now coming into the fall football season. But we do love some football, and that's what we're here to talk about, some NFL. But before we get into a little bit of divisions and some season win totals, I always like to ask a different question. I'm curious on, we had some rule changes, and we always do every year, but what are two rule changes that really need to happen in the NFL? I would say your top two.
Yeah, so I think number one, by far to me, would be making everything reviewable. I think there are still too many obvious errors that are allowed to go under the guise of, well, it's not reviewable. And I understand people say, oh, then you'll be reviewing everything. Absolutely not. It has to be the other team has to challenge it. The other coach has to challenge it. And they still only have two challenges. Now, maybe that leads into my second rule, Kiev, which is if they get three challenges right, they should get a fourth, because it's comical to me that if you get two right, you get a third, but then you're done. What if the refs are having a terrible day? I mean, if you keep challenging them and you keep being right, you shouldn't get punished for that. So I really think there are too many things we're seeing with some of the roughing the quarterback penalties or some of the other penalties where the officials have been given the standard of essentially, when in doubt, throw the flag. And so they do that on any type of hits to the head, targeting down the field, although they don't call it targeting in the NFL. They do that with the quarterback. And I think this pendulum has swung a little bit too far. I think it'd be nice to be able to review it and be like, no, come on, that's not a penalty, and take it away. So that's probably one and two would be being able to review everything. I'm not adding challenges. I don't think I'm even slowing down the game that much. And honestly, Kev, I think it even creates more of an intrigue and strategy, because if you're a coach, do you challenge it or do you not challenge it? You better be real sure that they screwed up or that it's going to get overturned if you're going to use one of your two challenges.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with more review, but I also think they can do it a little more efficient. I think a little bit last year they dabbled with an eye in the sky type situation where they would just quick overturn it. I think that was in the playoffs where you might have saw some of that. I like that because it's quick and it can be efficient, and they don't have to have the same guys correcting their own homework. I think when you have the same people correcting their own homework, a little bit of ego tends to kind of get in a little bit. So in subconscious, it's just human nature. The NFL officials have a tough job. The game is so fast these days. There's more rules. So absolutely. I have no problem with more reviews. I hate the long stoppages, but I think if you just have like a 15, 20 seconds, and eye in the sky can push a red button and they can get a quick signal that, hey, we have to quick check this. I think that would definitely do wonders for the game. So
my issue with that, Kiev, is it's still a little too vague on what, I forget what they even call it, but it's still a little too vague on what the eye in the sky can affect and can affect. And it seems like the bigger the game, the more the impact they have, which is fine, except shouldn't it be the same, for every game? There's still a little bit of a vague, a gray area there.
Yeah, there certainly is a gray area because the importance of the game is going to factor in, and there needs to be some protocols. And I don't have that either. And And I agree that that's something I'd like to get to. I know the XFL dabbled with the eye in the sky, and it was going good till the league first went under. But man, there's just so many things that can be sped up and done a little bit more efficiently. I've seen refs review their own mistakes, and the whole nation sees it, and they still keep it. That just absolutely blows my mind. And I actually have numbers on refs now, Ross, for my handicapping for totals and at home and away. I think it definitely factors into the game. So
Hey,
I
you
would
know
like to
what?
see
I
that.
think I think that's very smart, Kiev, because the teams do. You know, the
Yeah,
teams do. Belichick used to tell us exactly what this officiating crew was like, what they called, what they didn't call, so that we could all be ready to roll and had an idea of what their tendencies were. Officials have tendencies just like players, and you should probably have a pretty good idea and the information at hand. I think that's smart of you.
thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully that pays me more dividends coming into this wonderful year of NFL capping and NFL play. I guess pass interference, defensive holding is always something I think needs to be revamped. I don't have all the answers for it, but having two chintzy calls at the last two Super Bowls at the end of the game pretty
Oh,
much put stamps on the last two Super Bowls when it was going on. That blows my mind a little bit. I think that needs to be fixed. And I think everybody knows that. But the weirdest one is the forward fumble by an offensive player. If you fumble the ball 10 yards and you get a first down because your guard, jumped on it, why are you getting rewarded for badly fumbling the ball? But at the same time, the opposite happens when you're trying to stretch for the goal line. You fumble it out of bounds through the goal line. You lose the thing completely. And some of those calls are, very close. Was his knee down? Was his knee not? I think that if you fumble the ball forward, even if your team gets it, you should get the ball back to where you fumble it, Ross.
well, that's what happens on fourth down. You know, on fourth down, you're not allowed to advance a fumble like that. So I understand where you're coming from. I'm okay with it because obviously they're not trying to do that unless it was fourth down or a try, like a 2-point conversion, where they might intentionally fumble it forward. I think everybody has an issue with what happens when you fumble the ball into the end zone.
Yeah.
It is crazy to me. If you fumble the ball at the 1-inch line, you get the ball at the 1-inch line. If you fumble the ball one more inch forward, the other team gets the ball at the 20. I mean, where is the equity there? That's amazing.
It is absolutely amazing. And how do they not look at that? But hopefully that weirdness. I mean, it's your human nature to stretch and try. You're trying to score, man. I mean, yeah, you fumble, but the other team didn't get it at the same time. If they got it, that's something else, but they didn't. So I absolutely agree with you on that one. Well, let's get into some divisions and some of their win totals, my man. We'll start with the NFC North. Me, as the lowly Bears fan, we'll go with the Bears is at 7.5 right now on most of the books out there. 7.5 for the Packers, Vikings 8.5, and Lions 9.5. Anything in the North?
Yeah, I kind of like the Lions to go over. I think the Lions are going to get to 10 wins. I think they're probably going to win that division. And then the other one I feel pretty strongly about is the Bears under. You know, I'm not sure the Bears have improved as much as everybody thinks that they have. I think they'll be better on the O line. I think DJ Moore will help, but they didn't win very many games last year. I think the Bears win 6 or 7 games. I don't think they get to 8.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Bears. It's a massive adjustment from 3. Now, we do know that last game, it's not like they're trying to win. They had Justin Fields, but still, I mean, the Vikings could have been trying better themselves. They rested a lot of guys for the playoffs. I think the Bears going from 3 to 8 is too much of a gap. So I'm with you on that. I was kind of hoping for an 8, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get it. Definitely a lean as well to the Bears being under that 7.5. The NFC South, you got the Bucks at 6.5, the Panthers at 7.5, the Falcons at 8.5. Juice to the over now, and now the Saints at 9.5.
Well, so NFC South is I like the under for the Bucks. I think the Bucks. I think it's going to be a major adjustment without Brady, both on the field, off the field. I mean, they only won 8 games last year with Brady, and now they're going to win 7 with Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. Give me the under for the Bucks. I'm not feeling that one. I think Carolina is about right. I kind of like the Atlanta over out of the other ones because I can see Atlanta winning 9 or 10 games. I don't think their quarterback play is going to be worse than what it was last year. And they made a lot of additions, really both sides of the ball. They get Kyle Pitts back. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta wins that division. So I'll take Atlanta over and the Bucks under in the NFC South.
No disagreement here because I bet Atlanta to make the playoffs at plus 180 about 2 months ago, Ross. And we know now that 7 teams do make the playoffs from each side. So I love that value. And I have a very strong lean to the Falcons over. One thing I will say about the Bucks is maybe hate them in the regular season, but preseason football is among us. And whenever there's 2 quarterbacks in high competition to make that starting position, Baker Mayfield's trying to prove something. Kyle Trask, that's a buy-on team in the preseason. So be prepared for a few preseason bets on some of these ugly teams that you might not be completely on during the regular season. Let's move on to the NFC East. The Commanders at 6.5, the Giants at 7.5, the Cowboys at 9.5, and the Eagles, your Eagles, buddy, 11.5.
Yeah, so I guess the ones that jump out to me here, I like the Dallas Cowboys over 9.5. I mean, what they win 12 games last year, and now you add Stephon Gilmore as your number 2 corner. You've got Brandon Cooks as your number 2 wide receiver. I'd be very surprised, barring injury, if the Cowboys don't win double-digit games. So I like the Cowboys over there, and I still probably like the Eagles over. I mean, they lost 1 game last year in the regular season when Jalen Hurts played. They still have a very good team. I think for me, the other bet would be a tough one between the Giants over and the Eagles over, but I'll go Giants. I mean, I still think with Daboll, and they have enough that they add. I think the Giants win 8 or 9 football games. So my 2 plays in this division, as much as I like the Eagles, 11.5 is a pretty big number. I'll go over 9.5 for Dallas and over 7.5 for the G-Men.
All right. So the G-Men has actually been hit under from a sharper side pretty much over the last month and a half. I thought the number is correct at 7.5 myself. I didn't make any play on that. The Cowboys, one thing that worries about me is the Cowboys is they did lose their offensive coordinator, obviously, to the Chargers. And McCarthy is just, man, that coach is just, he bugs me. I don't know what's about him.
Well, that's the big one. That's the one thing that I think is going to end up hurting the Cowboys is moving. I mean, the last 4 years, Kiev, the only team to have more yards and points than the Dallas Cowboys is the Kansas City Chiefs, who have had Mahomes play like every game. The Cowboys have had a bunch of DiNucci and Andy Dalton and Cooper Rush in there, and yet they were still second in yards, second in points over the last 4 years. I'm pretty surprised that they made the move they did and that Cowboys fans looked to scapegoat Kellen Moore. I thought that was asinine.
Yeah, that was. And now I don't think that the end of the fourth quarter is where these guys gelled together, McCarthy and Moore. And there's some very strange play calls when they're up in many times and when they're down at many times at the end. I think that was a big crutch for them. And now that Moore's with Staley, what can go wrong for the Chargers this year? Let's move on to the NFC West. The Cardinals all the way down to 4.5, probably juice the under now. The Rams at 6.5, the Seahawks at 8.5, and the Niners at 10.5. Ross, what do you got?
Well, I like the Seahawks over 8.5. I think the Seahawks have a really good team, and I like some bringing Bobby Wagner back, some of the additions they made to the defensive line. I don't think Geno Smith and what he did last year was a fluke. I'd be surprised if they don't get to 9 wins. They're actually a dark horse team for me, Kiev, to win the NFC. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if either the Seahawks or the Lions made a run all the way to the conference championship game and won it. So really like the over for the Seahawks. And actually, I like the under for both the Rams and the Cardinals. I don't really see either one of them getting there. 7 wins for the Rams sounds like a lot. They better stay healthy. And I don't think the Cardinals get to 5 wins this year. I think they're a 3 or a 4 win team. So I'll go under on the Rams and Cardinals, over on the Seahawks.
Well, I've got enough under on the Rams this year, probably the most I've bet. I mean, I got 7.5 though, most of it. So that thing's already moved out of contention, really. I mean, I would still lean to the under. Seahawks, I'm glad you said that because I came into this season, Ross Captain, and I thought that I'd be low on the Seahawks, but I really loved what they did to their team. I love Devin Witherspoon. I love Jackson Smith and the Jig. My edge, Derek Hall. Zach Charbonnet is injured, but they do have backups right now. It sucks they lost some backs, but man, they got Draymond Jones, Julian Love, Jaron Reed, Bobby Wagner is back now. I think they're doing all the right things. And if Gino just takes that, he made a big step forward last year. If he just takes that another step a little bit forward, this could be a very dangerous team. I bet over Seattle, one of my earlier plays as well, Ross. So I'm completely on the same page with you on that one. Let's move on to the AFC North. And let me pull my numbers up here. They disappeared. Unfortunately, I believe that
it's Steelers 8.5, Browns 8.5, Ravens 9.5, Bengals 11.5.
Thank you.
And I like I'll tell you a couple I like here. I like the Ravens under. 9.5 for the Ravens. I'm skeptical of this new offense. Everybody's talking about Todd Monken and the Ravens are gonna. Lamar says we're gonna throw the ball more and run it less. Are we sure that's a good thing? I mean, are we sure that's a positive for the Ravens? I'm not. So I kind of like the under for the Ravens there. With thinking there's a possibility they win 8 or 9 games, and then how do you not take the Steelers over? I mean, they haven't had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. And now with some of the additions they made to the O-line and with Kenny Pickett in year 2, I'd be surprised they didn't win 9 or 10 games. So my plays in the AFC North would be over for the Steelers and under for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I am neutral on the Ravens, and because their season win total is pretty high. Can Todd Monken's system translate to the NFL? That's always the big question. And it's usually no, when this situation happens. So I understand what you're saying right there. I mean, the big question is, does Cincinnati take a big step back? And after all the good stuff that I'm hearing out there, I don't see that. The fact that Mixon took a pay cut at running back shows he's team friendly right now, while the other running backs are screaming right now. I know they lost some guys, but they also gained some guys like Orlando Brown, safety Nick Scott, Irv Smith at tight end. I love the Miles Murphy pick out of Clemson, edge DJ Turner, safety Jordan Battle. They got one of the top 2 safeties, I think, in the 3rd or 4th round. And of course, Chase Brown from Illinois was a very good running back. I think that the Bengals have a great chance to win the Super Bowl. I think Joe Burrow might be a good look to win the MVP this year. I know you got Mahomes there, and that's always difficult, but maybe Kansas City's a little bit more on a hangover year. So I understand that. And yeah, I did take the Steelers at 6-1 to win the division earlier this year. I think it's at 5-1 or 4.5-1 right now. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let's move on to the AFC South then. And we have the Colts at 6.5, the Texans at 6.5, the Titans at 7.5, and the Jaguars at 9.5. Any plays in this one?
Yeah, I like the under for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think their offensive line has some major issues. They lose Jawan Taylor, the right tackle, in free agency. The left tackle, Cam Robinson, suspended for 4 games. So it just feels like they're in a bad spot there. Even Anton Harrison, their first-round pick, is a little bit banged up now. I don't think they get the double-digit win. So I'll take the under for the Jaguars. And I kind of like the over for the Tennessee Titans. I'm concerned about their offensive line like everybody else, but they were a Josh Dobbs fumble away from winning the division last year, with no receiver. Now they have DeAndre Hopkins. Treylon Burks is year 2. And they have a healthy Tannehill, who they barely had him at all last year, and they still almost won it. So I'll take the Titans over and the Jags under.
All right. Well, I'll tell you this. The Titans did a lot of good stuff with DeAndre Hopkins. I wonder if Tannehill is just going to be massively motivated now, or does he take the other route? I would say probably the motivation route, because they pretty much tried to replace him already. That was kind of weird for me. But one bet that I just made, is after just watching Jim Irsay saying a bunch of stuff that he doesn't have to say about running backs and Jonathan Taylor. I thought that was straight ugly. And then, of course, their backup breaks his arm the next day in practice. I took them to be the worst team, and I rarely make this bet, but I got 15-1. And Anthony Richardson is a massive project, in my opinion. He threw 54% last year, and his running was what won him games. That's not going to take you so far in the NFL unless you can hold the ball and actually be some sort of a quarterback and be a threat. The reason Lamar could run is because he could throw the ball in some cases, especially to the middle of the field. So I think the Colts, very good chance they have the worst record in the league. I know I'm fighting with the Cardinals here. The Cardinals are like only 2.5-1, but I got 15-1 in the Colts. I took a shot at that one, Ross.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I don't think that'll happen because I think Shane Steichen will have a really good plan for them, and I do think a quarterback that can run like that, they can find a way to win some football games with his running ability and throwing the ball just enough. I think there'll be worse teams than Indy.
All right, so little disagreement there. Let's move on to the AFC East. The Patriots 7.5, the Dolphins 9.5, Jets 9.5, and Bills 10.5.
Yeah, I don't really have much in this division, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that the Patriots win 7 or 8 games. I think the Dolphins and Jets both win 9 or 10 games, and I think the Bills win 10 or 11. I mean, this is the one division where I don't have anyone that I feel strongly about, and that's okay, by the way. You don't have to play in every division. There's no rules out here. I think this whole division is correctly lined. This is a stay away division for me.
All right. Well, I heard you and Fez talking about the Jets in their first 6 games on even money, and you're right. Those are brutal first 6 games, Ross. But I will say that I wanted to take the Bills under 10.5 because I really think Dayball was a lot bigger part to this offense than people really presumed, and I don't like the fact that they lost their linebacker Edmonds to the Bears. I thought he was a massive part of that defense. I took the Dolphins under, and the reason I did is because what is your backup plan for Tua, who had 3 concussions last year, and they might have been hiding one? Skylar Thompson, Mike White, he was on the brink of retirement last year if he got another one. I don't see how he gets through. He's always been injury prone. That's all it takes for that Dolphins to go under. And obviously, if Tua plays and something else happens, that could hit. But I took the Dolphins under, Ross. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if he stays healthy, they go over. Although, yeah, I think if he stays healthy, they go over. But the Jalen Ramsey injury is concerning. They were counting on him. I don't think he'll play at all this year.
Yeah, that's massive. I totally agree. Let's move on to the final AFC rest. Raiders. I wrote this last week at 7.5. Is it still 7.5? Broncos 8.5, Chargers 9.5, Chiefs 11.5.
I like the Raiders under the 7.5. I don't think they get to 8 wins. Based on what? I mean, what have they done? What have they added? Swapping out Derek Carr for Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get them several more wins. I don't really see it. My favorite play in this division is the Raiders under the 7.5. I kind of like the Chargers over the 9.5. I just think they have a really talented team. And I do like Kellen Moore as an OC and think he'll get more behind a really good offensive line with Justin Herbert. So my favorite play is the Raiders under, and I also kind of like the Chargers over.
I'm disappointed that I didn't get the Raiders. It's under 7.5 minus 240 now. So you might as well make that 6.5. It's really adjusted in price. But yeah, that is Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he benefited from having 2 great coaches, Bill Belichick and Kyle Shanahan. I don't even know if he's better than Carr. I don't think he is. Now you got Devontae Adams requesting trades. It's ugly out there. And the running back's not happy either. So I 100% agree with you on that. Anything else in the NFL landscape that we haven't covered that you might want to play?
No, I don't think so. I think we hit it. I think if you're looking for a long shot, Kiev, I think if there was ever a year where a team with longer odds could win a conference, it feels like the NFC this year with the Niners quarterback issues, with Dallas losing Kellen Moore at OC, with the Eagles losing 7 starters. it feels like there's a chance for a team like Seattle or Detroit to come out of nowhere and get all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't think it'll happen, but there's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, if Detroit fixes that defense, that offense was humming last year. And Jared Goff has a chip on his shoulder, but that is also the reason that they have the highest win total in the whole NFC North. Ross, thank you so much for coming on, my man. I always love talking pigskin with you. Love watching your broadcasts and listening to your podcast. Where could our listeners get your great information, media, and plays?
Yeah, honestly, whatever social media platform you're on, just hit me up at Ross Tucker NFL. It's either football, beer, or food, probably in that order. And I think you'll enjoy it. Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. And then we've got a betting podcast as well, the Even Money podcast. It's very, very popular. Steve Fezzik's my co-host on that one. And we've done very, very well the last few years. So check that one out as well if you want to make sure you're winning your NFL bets each week.
There you go. That makes me hungrier for football, beer, football, and food, man. I love it. Make sure you guys check out Ross Tucker at Even Money and all the podcasts at Ross Tucker Media.